This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Yang Chu's Garden of Pleasure, translated from the Chinese by Professor Anton Fork, from the Book of Liezi, the Yang Chu chapter, Book 7, with an introduction by Hugh Cranmer Bien. Introduction. The period of the warring states of the Western Chinese Empire, 480 to 230 BC, embraces practically almost all of the philosophies of China, and is curiously coincident with the rise of philosophy in Greece under somewhat similar conditions. To the capital of Liang, in the state of Wei, came all the philosophers, just as they came to Athens. Here came Mencius, perhaps one of the greatest exponents of Confucianism, a veritable St. Paul of the Confucian movement, and the chief opponent of Yang Chu. Here came Chuang-Tzu, most subtle among the Taoist sophists, Li Hwei, the great statesman and lawgiver, Sun Tzu, the philosopher of the doctrine of original evil, Wen Tzu, the able follower of Lao Tzu, and Mo Ti, the apostle of brotherly love, whose name is frequently bracketed with Yang Chu in condemnation by Mencius. Seldom had any capital in the world attracted so many profound, original, and subtle thinkers as the capital of the state of Wei in the 3rd and 2nd centuries before Christ. The spread of Christianity in Eastern Europe and Confucianism in China ultimately destroyed or diverted the philosophic spirit, substituting religious dogma and rites for philosophic inquiry and reason, and for centuries the philosophies lay buried or perished altogether in the great burning of books in 213 BC, or passed, like Taoism, into the realms of rites and worship, or were preserved only in fragmentary form, like the single chapter of the philosophy of Yang Chu that remains embedded in the Taoist teachings of Liezi. But in the 3rd and 4th centuries BC, the golden period of Chinese philosophy, the minds of men were turned to the critical examination of life. Philosophers rose, boldly exploring the motives and mysteries of existence, gathered around them disciples, and went from court to court, gaining fresh adherents and disputing with rival teachers on the most diverse and subtle of subjects. At the Court of Liang, in the period of Yang Chu, about 300 BC, the philosophers were treated as guests of the reigning king, who reserved for them lodging and maintenance, and encouraged all who had any pretence to the pursuit of truth and wisdom. Whether or not Yang Chu was actually a native of the Wei State, or whether he came there drawn by the attraction of a critical and unrivaled audience, it is at least certain that he settled there as a small proprietor, probably in the reign of King Hwei, and continued there till his death about 250 BC. One may imagine a condition of life in many respects somewhat analogous to the life of Epicurus in his famous Athenian garden. To the philosopher of pleasure and contentment came pupils and disciples. Discourses were held in much the same way as at an identical period discourses were held in the garden at Athens, and it is to these discourses, memorized and recorded by his favorite pupil Mangsu Yang, that we probably owe the single fragment of the teaching of Yang Chu that remains, a fragment complete and explicit enough to enable us to form a clear estimate of his teaching and philosophy. Of his personal life, a little is to be gathered from chapter 14, where in an amusing interview with the King of Liang, the philosopher states the simple truth that what is possible and easy to some men is difficult and impossible of attainment to others, and that there is no more real merit in ruling a kingdom well than in guiding a flock of sheep. From this chapter we learn that he lived the customary life of the Chinese gentleman of his day. A wife, a concubine, and a gardener mentioned, and in surroundings quite simple and unpretentious he found, one may imagine, something of pleasure and contentment of his philosophic ideal. From the few authentic anecdotes contained partly in the book of Chuang-Tzu and Liezi, one may gain but a little more, that he had a brother called Yang Pu, the hero of the delightful story of the dog who failed to recognize
Sample complete. Ready to continue?